Alexa-powered smart speaker and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy over the weekend was, full-on damage control and spin-meistering by Biden Incorporated and its surrogates. Starting with Hunter's lawyer. Hunter
Chris
Biden's
Clark?
lawyer. No, Abby Lowell.
Oh.
He was on to spoon-feed Joe Scarborough, dutifully performing for the regime, about Hunter Biden's business. And, there's the profile of Hunter Biden that's been created in right-wing media. And then there's the real Hunter Biden. And Abby Lowell was kind enough to tell us who the real Hunter Biden is. Now, look, he'd be happy to get into his business, Hunter Biden's business, and what he did, but it's too complicated for you to understand, so he's not going to try.
Well, okay, so first of all, it's much more complicated than to say it comes from countries. There are joint ventures between American entities and, in one or two occasions, a potential foreign entity to create the possibility of jobs and energy in the United States. That's too complicated to try to explain, but I can answer the question that you asked in the following way. Over the time that he was in business, this is, again, something that people ought to pay attention to. Hunter Biden went to Georgetown University, went to Yale Law School, was on the board of directors of a bank, was on the board of directors of Amtrak, is somebody who went and worked in an international law firm. People seem to forget that this is not the person who's simply out there having people write checks for no reason. He's a capable, educated, experienced person.
No, there's a reason they're writing checks. And Abby Lowell would have us to believe, because this is one of the great legal and financial minds of his generation. Okay. I mean, if you want to believe that, sure. Jake Tapper's not even buying that at this point. Jake Tapper and his panelists over the weekend on this matter of Hunter Biden's business and what Mr. 10%, the big guy, President Biden, was saying when he was candidate Biden on the debate stage in 2020.
And Kristen, Glenn Kessler from the Washington Post had a fact check about Joe Biden from earlier this month, noting that Hunter Biden admitted in court in July that he was in fact paid substantial sums from Chinese companies. Kessler wrote, Hunter Biden reported nearly $2.4 million in income in 2017 and $2.2 million in income in 2018, most of which came from Chinese or Ukrainian interests. But this directly goes against what Joe Biden said in the debate in 2020 with Donald Trump. Take a listen.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China.
None of that is true. He made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
So it's from two different debates, but, I mean, Trump was right. I mean, he did make a fortune from China, and Joe Biden was wrong. I don't know that he was lying about it. He might not have been told by Hunter, but this blind spot is a problem.
There's the fallback position.
Wow.
Just a blind spot. Mm-hmm. And so you had a Flack, former Michigan Congressman Andy Levin, on to regurgitate that setup that Tapper just provided. Hey, we all got blind spots with our kids, you know?
Well, I think dads have sometimes, and parents sometimes have blind spots about their kids, for sure, and the president may be no exception. But nothing has tied the president to any of Hunter Biden's dealings. There's no whiff of him being involved or him being implicated in it. And it's, I think it's not something the voters care a lot about.
For more on this, please be joined by Andy McCarthy, former chief assistant U.S. attorney and contributing editor at National Review, also the author of the bestseller Ball of Collusion, The Plot to Rig an Election and Destroy a Presidency. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Blind spots, not really a legal argument, a political one, but, it just seems like relatively straightforward, and people will care about this, some people will, being treated like a dope. A lot of people don't like to be treated like a dope. Some people do, apparently. But let's just take that at face value and say, sure, he didn't know, despite all the evidence that we have to the contrary. Did he have a duty to know as the vice president, as a former vice president of the United States, and when he was vice president and as a former vice president, as a candidate for president? Did he have a duty to know if his power was being, in this argument, compromised by his son?
Well, I don't know how a guy can be president of the United States and expect to be trusted with those kinds of responsibilities, which require knowing an awful lot of things, but then tell you he didn't know the major thing that was going on in his own family, which was making millions of dollars off his name, not Hunter's name, his name. And the other thing, I think a lot of things are missed because this has not been subjected to an ordinary investigation as it would be in connection with anyone whose last name wasn't Biden. But there's about 8 zillion internal, regulations and protocols in the government where if you have an interest in something, you're not only expected to know what your family members are up to, particularly when it comes to foreign powers. When somebody seeks a security clearance in the government, you have to fill out this form SF-86, where it seems like a book-length form, but they want to know every foreign contact you have, every foreign transaction you've had, every dime that you make in connection with any kinds of foreign commerce, and not just you, but your close family members, because the experience of the intelligence community is the way people get blackmailed is by, being in a compromised financial situation with foreign actors. That's just, something that's common sense that the intelligence community looks at all the time. So obviously you're expected to know that stuff. And let's say Joe Biden showed up at a dinner in Georgetown in 2014 with a bunch of Hunter's foreign business partners. And maybe he shows up by accident. He thinks he's going to see his son, and it turns out that he's been set up to, glad hand with all these people. You could forgive him for one night, but the next morning, he better be calling Hunter saying, don't you ever put me in that position again. Instead, that was the regular course of business, because the business was access to Joe Biden, and it's ridiculous to think that he didn't know that since he was the business. All this nonsense about, what did he know? And was he in business with Hunter? And did he ever discuss business with Hunter? Joe Biden was the business. And the thought that it could have gone on for years and years as it did, and that he didn't know that, is just laughable.
Yeah, but there's proofs of a payoff, right? On June 8th, didn't the FBI drop documents saying Biden took a $5 million bribe?
Well, that's an informant claim that hasn't been, we don't know if they can prove that or not. But Amy, what I would say is, yeah, and they should be able to run it down. It's certainly the way Miklashevsky described it. It certainly seems to resemble what the House has found in other connections with other foreign payments. But what I would stress to people is all these people who are looking for some affirmative thing that he did, like some money that ends up in the bank, in a personal bank account of Joe Biden's, and then some quid pro quo thing that he did to advance the interest of whoever paid him. The point of this business was for the people who were paying to be shown to have access to Joe Biden so that other people would leave them alone. Like this guy, Miklashevsky, who's paying to have, Hunter on his board, and who the allegation is he paid this additional bribe money to the Bidens. He was hoping for the Ukrainians to leave him alone. He wanted the Brits to leave him alone. They had just seized a bunch of his money. The idea is that if you have access to the big dog and you have a relationship with somebody who is powerful in government, people who are less powerful in government are not going to want to mess with you. They can go mess with somebody else. Right. That's what these people were buying.
And also they're buying access to inside deals. I mean, they want access to potential energy deals in the United States. I mean, so it's the same thing. It's a shield and a sword.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just think that to the extent Republicans and others are, thinking we're getting close to being able to prove that, Biden got a direct payment or Biden did a direct thing.
Right.
I think you're framing the thing. If that's your position, I'm not saying you, Dan, but I'm saying someone's general position, I think you got to have more accurate what this was.
Right. So in response to that,
otherwise you're going to set.
Yeah. In response to all this, there's no tie. The whole thing was an ongoing thing. I mean, it's just like anybody looking at this knows this. You can do the Jamie Raskin, his poor boy dealing with addiction and what you heard from that former Michigan congressman. You can't directly link. That's their fallback position. But I mean, give me a break. Here's what was happening. This guy, this son went out with his name selling this access. That's what they paid for. That's what they all said they paid for. That's what Hunter Biden's business partners are saying they paid for. Devin Archer's testimony, among others. And that's it. So it was going on the entire time. It's not a single moment. It's not a deep throat situation. It's just, this is what you think it is, right? I mean, you just have to trust your common sense.
Take the simplest example that's right in front of our face that shows how this worked. Heard of Hunter Biden? His felonies? When did he get indicted? He never got indicted. Case has been going on for 5 years. He's dead to rights on tax evasion stuff and a 10-year gun felony. He's never been charged. Why not?
Yeah, because
who's his dad?
Yeah, who's his daddy?
Well, speaking, you want to prosecute Joe Biden's son? I mean, that's what these people were buying.
Yes,
he's so powerful that you got a guy who's dead to rights on a bunch of felony counts, and they won't even dare indict him. Forget about take him to trial; they won't even charge him.
But then, the flip, he's trying to keep his son out of prison. He wants his opponent in prison, President Trump. I mean, is there a chance that he could go to prison in Georgia?
President Trump now?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yep.
Well, I think that she's overcharged the case. The RICO is ridiculous, and there's no overarching conspiracy charge that ties this whole thing together. But if you dig into the schemes, I think he's going to have problems with. They could. I don't buy the counts where they're trying to solicit state officials to violate their oath, because I think that violates the Constitution unless you're talking about solicitation of violence. But the fake electors, to the extent that they had a plan to try to use them to get Pence to not count the votes, and they have Trump and Eastman filing a verified complaint in federal court where the emails seem to indicate that they knew the numbers they were given the federal court were dubious, if not false. So they've got a couple of things to be concerned about, but it's not the RICO. What she should have done, since she has this is Fannie Willis, I'm talking about the DA. Unlike Smith, she has the advantage of, it's states that conduct elections. So she's got an array of election integrity statutes in Georgia penal law. And she should have stuck to those instead of reaching for the stars on RICO. What she tried to do was the indictment version of the January 6th committee. And it's just not a true story that Trump was a criminal mastermind playing five-dimensional chess with this scheme that had multi-parts. And, this was a bunch of people running around like chickens without their heads with disparate, disconnected schemes, none of which had any chance of success. And the Democrats like to frame this as if our democracy was hanging by a thread. That may make for entertaining primetime hearings for the January 6th committee, but it's not going to be very good at a trial where the defense lawyers get to push back.
Back to Biden. So the report is that his criminal defense attorney, Christopher Clark, told an assistant U.S. attorney named Leslie Wolf in Weiss's office that charging Hunter would be, quote unquote, career suicide. And they seem to have operated under that theory. Give us what you think happens with Hunter. Do they figure out a way to revive that plea deal and just not provide immunity for prospective issues, their quote unquote ongoing investigation? Or do they come down with a harsher punishment? All right, Hunter, you're going to have to do some time, so it makes it look like that you're actually subject to the laws of the United States. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I see them continuing to dither while the statute of limitations eats their case away. everything prior to 2017 and most things prior to 2018 are already gone. And this scheme only went till about 2019 because then they had to go dark when Biden started his 2020 campaign in earnest. So the whole case is almost gone as it is, including the most important stuff, which seems to have happened between 2014 and 2016 when Joe Biden was vice president.
Right.
I imagine that what they'll try to do, I mean, they're still working together, and they're collaborating. That is to say, Weiss and the Biden defense lawyers, no matter what they're now saying for public consumption. So they'll try to work, some kind of a tax plea out that maybe, where he won't have to do any time, but maybe he pleads guilty to something more serious than what was on the table before. But Dan, as far as like the ongoing investigation is concerned, to my mind, Weiss gave that away in, the plea document.
Right.
Weiss stipulates to a statement of facts that says they got the money because Hunter was a sophisticated high-end lawyer, not because they were, being paid off bribes by foreign actors. And he says that Hunter didn't pay his taxes because he was drug-addled, not that they were trying to hide the payments because they didn't want you to know where the payments were coming from. So Weiss signed on to that theory. How could you have an actual ongoing investigation of potential bribery, money laundering, and foreign agent registration violations if you're signing a document that says they got the money because Hunter was a high-end lawyer?
Well, now
he didn't pay the taxes because he was a drug addict.
Now I'm special counsel, and all of a sudden, with my newfound powers, I find other information that makes me rethink my previous position, and so that this does need some looking into. I mean, I can't believe that Weiss would be this craven, although maybe I'm underestimating him, to try to do a four-corner run out the clock completely on the case pending, the cases or the potential charges facing Hunter Biden.
Yeah, he wants to be U.S. attorney in Delaware, and he's always known that that's the job that he really wanted. And he's always known that as long as he maintains the Biden investigation without doing anything, he's not going to be fired. He's the only Trump holdover who was not fired.
Right.
And he's got his insurance policy is Hunter. And nothing in that dynamic has changed since last week. Biden is still president, and this guy is still dependent on Biden for the job that he wants.
Andy McCarthy, former chief assistant U.S. attorney, Southern District of New York, contributing editor at National Review, author of the bestseller Ball of Collusion, The Plot to Rig an Election and Destroy a Presidency. Andy, thank you as always.
Have a great day.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Rick here from Forever Remodeling. You probably heard me talk about how our unique design build process removes the